Okay, great. And so I'd like to introduce our final speaker for the panel, Noel Mellor, who will be speaking to us about fear in the feed, horror marketing, and audience engagement in the age of social media. Take it away.
Thank you. To the filthy business of marketing. Okay, so my name's Noel. I've been a film scholar for several years, but prior to academia, I've worked in brand marketing. So my area of research is very much about bringing together those two passion areas. I'm currently working on a book and a podcast project which is focused on the history of film marketing, specifically how it has changed with society, technology and audience behaviours. That project covers all genres, but the truth is horror offers up such great case studies for this kind of thing that I am continually pulled back to it. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about the 2025 campaign for weapons and how I feel this plays with some of the marketing techniques of the past, but in perhaps a more modern digital marketing context. So like potentially some people here today, I grew up in the 1980s, a time when movie marketing was not known for its subtlety, and content was still then referred to as film and television. Unlike the kids of today, I didn't waste my life scrolling social media. I wasted it in here. This is Video World in Swinton, where I would scroll through the video store shelves instead and issue my subsequent likes and dislikes in the viral networks of the school playground. So the birth of home video in the late 70s and early 80s brought with it a hunger for film content that independent distributors at first and much later bigger Hollywood players were keen to satiate. As Johnny Walker puts it in his brilliantly detailed look at the period, Rewind, Replay, it was an open door to an unconquered land of milk and honey. And to a kid my age, this beautiful, evocative artwork and incredible promotional copy was absolutely everything. And in hindsight, probably contributed to me ending up working in brand marketing. But any successful product marketing strategy starts with understanding the brand identity that supports the product and how these two things live together in the consumer's mind. So the two sides of that identity, the first is visual identity, which Ollins says we tend to summarise as some colours, some typefaces, a strapline or slogan, all topped off with a logo or symbol. But in addition to that visual identity, a brand must also ensure that its products, its behaviours, the environments that it places itself in, and its tone of voice all make sense to consumers. So this is what Ollins refers to as the core idea, and it must be fully symbiotic with the visual identity to establish meaningful conversations and long-term relationships with target audiences. So there is, of course, an entire industry built around brand management, all designed to make brand communications consistent, compelling and convincing, or as Berger puts it, top of mind and tip of tongue. And it works. If I went around the room and asked everyone to identify these 5 brands on visual identity alone, I doubt anyone would struggle to get at least 3 of them. The trick is ensuring that those visual triggers activate your intended message with the audience so that they can then associate it with the core idea of the product. In high concept movies and marketing in Hollywood, Justin Wyatt considers the 1970s and 1980s as the moment where film product and marketing become fully integrated. And if we look at how this plays out in the burgeoning slasher films of the day, we see that balance of visual identity and core idea used to turn single films into successful multi-platform transmedia franchises. Again, I'm sure everyone here could identify these horror movie brands on the colours and fonts of their UK posters alone, or from the taglines or the core idea around that original film. However, as those films become franchises, the visual identity becomes more refined, more consistent, and places greater emphasis on what I call the brand Boogeyman of the series. Despite being based around what is, on the surface, a very similar product, deranged man kills teens, audiences can now identify the unique core idea of each series as triggered by its familiar visual identity. As such, these characters come to represent the franchise at all levels, not just via the film as a product, but throughout all of its associated packaging too. But much has changed since Freddy, Jason and Leatherface ruled the rental store shelves, as virality is now the golden goose of mainstream film marketing. So ideas must be resonant, but they must also be shareable. And in Contagious, Jonah Berger identifies 6 key reasons that people share online and highlights brands that tell impactful stories as one of those. So through stories, Berger argues that brands can create a Trojan horse which encourages deeper discussion and stronger relationships with products. So for example, if the product is a toothpaste, the story isn't about the white goo inside the tube, it's about the whiter smile, the fresher breath, and the greater confidence that you'll enjoy because of it. Of course, when your product is a story, that narrative already exists. So the challenge becomes how you utilise that. How do you invite intrigue and get the audience to speculate on what might happen without giving away what will? So released theatrically in April 2025, the first Weapons teaser was an absolute masterclass in just that. Opening on a bedside alarm at 2:17 a.m, the trailer transitions to empty suburban streets, lit only by street lights and porch lights, with a voiceover which appears to be a police officer discussing a missing child with a concerned father. At the halfway mark, the silhouette of a child runs past one of the houses, followed by similar scenes shown through windows and on CCTV footage. And at the end, bold red on-screen text invites us to find out more information at maybrookmissing.com. Now, high production values, studio logos and an MPA rating give away that this is a movie trailer, but tonally something else is being suggested. No title, no stars, no release date, just the promise of further information on a website, leaving audiences free to investigate and speculate. So in this setup, maybrookmissing.com becomes Berger's Trojan horse, a carrier narrative built for sharing that encourages discussion around a product. The website acts in almost every way like a real local news source for the film's fictional suburban town, even down to the intentionally old-school GeoCities style layout, fonts and awkward navigation. On the homepage, a vital 114-word explanation. At 2:17 a.m, 17 children got up, walked out of their front doors and ran into the night. No one knows why. And that's basically our core idea laid out in black and white. Alongside that, we have interviews with parents and law enforcement and doorbell camera footage time-stamped at 2:17 a.m, allowing viewers to experience what Turner refers to as mediated footage of actuality. So with the core idea established, brought to life via a digital Trojan horse, audiences begin to discuss the meaning behind the teaser and construct their own theories and narratives around maybrookmissing.com. Much of this centres around what was real, what was true, and what real cases the film may or may not be based on. And over on Reddit, these threads are given more contextual authenticity by appearing alongside search results of genuine missing children cases. How many of these conversations were instigated by genuine commenters and creators, I have my own theories, but as a campaign, it does exactly what it intends to do. Much like the online marketing template set by blairwitch.com, maybrookmissing.com relies on an open-ended mystery enriched by a sense of fuzzy authenticity. And similarities can also be seen in the structure and tone used across the poster copy too. In October of 1994, last night at 2:17 a.m, 3 student filmmakers, every child from Mrs. Gandhi's class, disappeared in the woods, walked into the dark, their footage was found, they never came back. In each case, this cold, factual news bulletin copy is taken directly from the opening of the movie, making the film product feel almost like a direct continuation of the marketing. In the case of Weapons, that monologue even ends with the line, "This is where the story really starts." Both Weapons and the Blair Witch Project were a massive success on a relatively small budget, and in both cases thoughts quickly turned to the possibility of a second film. But when the story has been told, that thin layer of mystery and authenticity quickly wears away. And while there are probably many reasons that both Blair Witch sequels haven't quite connected the same way as the original, I'd argue that two of them were there was no flexibility in the core idea, so no Trojan horse could be built around it to sell it. And number two, there is very little strength in the visual identity, so no brand to turn into something that audiences can have a lasting relationship with. So where does that leave a potential Weapons sequel? Well, unlike the Blair Witch Project, the challenge isn't really necessarily with the visual identity. The core idea, a classroom of suburban children mysteriously run off into the night at 2:17 a.m., was well exploited across the film's promotional materials. But for the film itself, it's only really a setup. Not only does Weapons focus on 6 episodic character stories as they play out after the events detailed in that opening monologue, the story really starts when a 7th character is introduced. Someone who transforms the film into something more culturally sustainable, something that can be repurposed long after the mystery has been resolved. And Gladys, with her oversized glasses, brutal ginger fringe, smeared lipstick and brightly coloured pantsuit, is a visually striking out-of-the-box brand Boogeyman or Boogie Lady straight away. Emerging slowly from behind frosted glass, fully equipped with her own unique, memorable, even memeable style, it's clear pretty quickly that this is the woman responsible for the disappearance of the children. To paraphrase director Jack Shoulder discussing Freddy Krueger in A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, by this point, she is the franchise. Suddenly, rather than Weapons being a shareable idea to be discussed and speculated upon in text-based forums ahead of its release, it has new life post-release as a visual participatory trend. Gladys becomes an avalanche of Halloween costumes, makeup tutorials and Etsy costume kits, and creators and cosplayers rack up millions of views showing off their versions of the character. She then crosses over into the wider Hollywood conversation, being parodied at the Oscars by Conan O'Brien and on teaser posters for Scary Movie 6. No surprise then that a new Weapons movie is in the works, which according to Variety is going to be a prequel and has the working title of Gladys. Now this suggests that the studio recognises that the core idea for the first film, the Trojan horse deployed across a highly effective marketing campaign, probably won't work a second time around. At very least, it shows that, like so many horror franchises before it, the studio knows that there's something much more compelling that they can make use of. So, if we assume then that the title is Gladys and they don't want to wander too far from the brand, then we might also assume that the font and colouring of the Weapons brand identity could be used again. For a tagline, well, this is a prequel, so why not once again lean on the monologue from the first film and that vital last line, this is where the real story starts. And from there, maybe we drop in some of that brand Boogeyman iconography, the ribbon-wrapped twig, a lipstick-smeared mug, a table littered with hair, and those essential Aunt Gladys glasses. And then just for good measure, and because I don't know the actual plot of the film, a call back to the original movie campaign. Is this what they'll go for? No, I'm sure they'll come up with something much smarter and clever. But hopefully this goes some way to illustrating my point. In contemporary film marketing, horror product will always benefit from a strong brand identity and a clear core idea. But where that core idea depends on unveiling hidden truths, the opportunity to turn that product into a franchise may be limited. That is, unless the film also comes with an equally distinctive and flexible visual brand, where characters and mythology can be used to sustain audience engagement long after that initial burst of intrigue has waned. That's me, thank you.